Hello, friends from the BC and beyond. It's your boy Jeff, and we're back in the spin zone. Um, I've got 8 albums to show that I've played since the last one of these videos that I've done. So, without further ado, as promised last time, I played both the Woodstock 3 and Woodstock 4 sets in honor of the 50th anniversary of the original Woodstock Festival. And just like the first 2 albums, it's just as good. So, I mean, there's more performances by, like I mentioned last time, Sly and the Family Stone, Johnny Winter, Joe Cocker, Richie Havens, Jefferson Airplane, Country Joe. On Woodstock 3, Janis Joplin is on this one, and I don't think she's made an appearance on any of these Woodstock collections till now. The Who does another, makes another appearance with Amazing Journey. Sweetwater, which I think they were the ones that opened the festival, get a song on here. So this one is the triple album, and it's really good. What can I say? And as for the fourth one, they do more sidelong songs. Like Jefferson Airplane does Wooden Ships, and that's all of side one on the first disc. And then you get Butterfield Blues Band again. You get another Joe Cocker song. You get another Who song. And then on side 4, that's nearly a sidelong affair with Ravi Shankar playing the sitar. And I listened to it. It was okay. I think if you were probably high, it would probably sound a lot better. But I listened to it. It was fine. What are you going to do? So, yeah, these took a while for me to get through because, number 3 is a triple album. This one's a double. So took a bit of time for me to get through them. That's why I don't have as many records this time around as I usually do. But it was well worth the listen. Then, my good friend Emma over at 8 Vinyl Low sent me a VCLT. And of course, I showed this one before. She sent me Bluesbreakers album, John Mayall with Eric Clapton. So this went right to the top of the list of must-spin records as soon as I got it. And here is the... Oh, see, I put the note with the records too, just like you do, Emma, just like other people do too. There's the back, just a lot of text. Sorry for the glare. And yeah, this record is just straight fire, as the kids like to say. Great guitar work from Mr. Clapton. Great playing all around by the whole band. Great choice of songs. Just a fantastic British blues album. These guys definitely got it right when they made this album. John Mayall and this crew could easily have fit in on the south side of Chicago back in the 60s. Had they lived here, they would definitely have fit right in. So this is easily a must-listen, must-own album for any even casual fan of blues music or blues rock music. You got to get this one. So, can't thank you enough for this one, Emma. This was a good one, and it got spun several times, and it'll get spun several more in the future, to be sure. Also included in her BCLT package, which I showed, is the first album by Cheap Trick. It's their self-titled album, and we all know Emma is the #1 fan of Cheap Trick. So she kindly gifted me with this album, and this is just a beginning to end power pop masterpiece. I love this album, and I wasn't, admittedly, not as familiar with early Cheap Trick as I thought I was, because I didn't really recognize a ton of songs off this album. But as I was listening to it, especially the first time I played it, I was like, oh yeah, I really like this. This is good. And then I would be turning the volume up louder and louder as each song went by. So, yeah. I may not be as hardcore a fan as you, Emma, but this was a good way to get me started liking these guys. I still have Heaven Tonight, which I haven't played yet. I wanted to get to it for this video, but it'll probably be in the next one. But anyway, thank you also for this album too. This was a great, great listen. Then, my wife bought the new album by Stapp called The Space Between the Shadows. It just showed up one day on the door, and you know, it was in one of those mailing record sleeves, and I'm like, did I buy something? Did somebody send me something? And I opened it and it was this, and I'm like, babe, did you order an album? She's like, oh yeah, I ordered the new Stapp album. I'm like, oh, okay. Didn't think I'd like this one that much because admittedly I'm not a fan of Creed, but I haven't really heard a lot of Creed, just the stuff on the radio. When we played this, I gotta honestly say, my mind was kind of turned around a bit by this album because these songs were very uplifting, almost kind of inspirational, and the music was good and hard, but not too hard. I don't know how else to put it. I'm not a big metal guy. This doesn't really fall quite into that metal category, just more like hard rock. But I ended up digging this album, bottom line, more than I thought I would. And by the time I got to the end, we were both like, oh, it's over. So this is a brand new album. We just put this one out this year. So if you were a fan of Creed in the past or Stapp solo, obviously check this out. And if you're like me and you didn't really know much about him or care much about him, this album could probably turn your head around a little bit. So Space Between the Shadows by Stapp, this was a better listen than I expected. So it was a nice, pleasant surprise. Then I have to correct a couple of mistakes that I made when I talked about my good buddy John over at the Digital Gramophone. I mentioned that he did a series of videos on Springsteen, but it was Springsteen songs, not albums. I know, bad Jeff. And I also mentioned that this album, Tunnel of Love, was high up on his list, and it wasn't. Bad Jeff. So apologies for that, John. Go watch those videos, though. If you like Springsteen, if you're a fan of Springsteen and you want to see someone who's completely passionate about his picks of Bruce Springsteen songs, he did 25 of them. So, or was it 20? Just kidding. Anyway, when I showed this album after I did all that misspeaking, and I used this as an entry for the last contest video I made, which was for David Newton, I believe, as an album that didn't quite make the cut by one of your favorite artists. And this was my example. And I said that, you know, at the time this came out in 1987, I bought this brand new, and I was a big, big Springsteen fan, and I was raring to go because it had been a couple of years since he put out an album, and I'm like, all right, he's putting out a new one, you know, and then I listened to this, and it was like, with a few exceptions. So I revisited this album recently. I gave it another spin, and 30 years later, 30 years of life experiences under my belt later, I found I enjoyed this album a whole lot more now than I did then as probably a 17 or 18-year-old kid. So, and it's more of an adult album anyway, you know. A teenager's not really going to get a lot of the themes on this record. So, I always like the title track, Tunnel of Love. That's always been a favorite of mine. But besides that, Tougher Than the Rest was probably my second favorite song on this album, just because I remember it when I first played this album as one that was kind of one of the more standout tracks. And I think he sang that song on the Springsteen on Broadway show. I think he did a duet with Patty with that song. I think, but don't quote me, because I could have easily get it wrong. But that was a real standout track for me. Of course, Brilliant Disguise was the first single release, and that's okay. You know, I like that one. But songs like One Step Up, I really liked. Valentine's Day, I really liked. What's the track list? Do I like it as much as his 70s albums? No. But I liked it a whole hell of a lot more than I did back in 1987 when this first came out. So I've revised my opinion on this album to a certain degree. So this still was the point where I jumped off the Springsteen train, as I like to call it. I got back on with, you know, tracks, you know, that B-sides and obscure recordings collection that he put out in the late 90s. I got that one. And then I got back on for The Rising, but then I kind of got back off. I'm interested in his new one, Western Stars. I'm probably going to pick that up at some point, just because it's from what I've heard of it, it sounds like something that I would like. But this album here is decent, pretty decent. And then after I listened to that album, of course, I was hot for more Springsteen, so I picked Nebraska, and I played that one too. Now this one is, I like Light Years more than Tunnel of Love still. And this was another one where, you know, coming off of big epic anthem rock albums like The River, and then releasing a solo acoustic, very spare, very demo-ish sounding album like Nebraska, which is what they were. I mean, these were basically demo tapes that he made that they turned into the album. For a teenager, not going to fly. Later as an adult, it's great. This is one of my favorite albums by him. Easily. And this cover picture captures the whole mood of this album perfectly. You know, I think of this, whenever I hear songs from this, my thoughts are in black and white, because it's just like a very stark, very spare, very direct album with minimal accompaniment and instrumentation. But the strength of Springsteen's voice and lyrics really shine through. And what can you say? It's Nebraska. This is a classic album of his, and I had to play it again. So that's what I did. And finally, we're doing a 180 from Bruce to Neil Diamond. This was a recent gift from Value Vinyl, my buddy Steve. And this collects all of Neil's hits from the late 60s, like Solitary Man, Kentucky Woman, Thank the Lord for the Nighttime, Cherry Cherry. Those are all great songs to me. I love them. So I wanted something a little bit lighter, something a little bit more, you know, a little bit more fun than listening to the heavy, dark Springsteen. So this was kind of a good antidote for that. Neil Diamond's Greatest Hits rounds out this video's selection of albums. And there you have it. Thank you all for watching. There will be more 78s to come in the near future. A few more anyway. I don't want to burn out too much on playing those things, but I still have a few more things to show that I think you guys might find interesting. So stay tuned for that. And this is going to be a quick one. I'm only at 14 minutes, so there you go. In and out, one and done. Bing, bang, boom. See you guys later. Peace. Hope you had a good weekend. I love you all.